The Fire at the Edge of the Ancient World. A sleep story. 100,000 BC, East Africa. Let your body sink. Let your shoulders drop just a little further than they already have. Let your jaw loosen. Let the weight of the day, the weight of everything you have been carrying, settle down, down into whatever is beneath you now. You do not need to hold anything tonight. Tonight, we are going somewhere very old. Older than language. Older than the first city. Older than the first road. We are going back to a time when the world was green and dark and alive in ways it has almost forgotten how to be. It is night. It is always night in this story, and the night is safe. Close your eyes if they are not already closed. Breathe in slowly through your nose, and let me take you there. Part 1. The Forest at the Edge of Sleeping. The forest at night is not silent. It breathes. It shifts. It hums with 10,000 small lives. The click of beetles in the bark, the slow drip of water from a broad leaf, the distant percussion of a frog repeating its single note into the darkness. The air is warm, heavy with moisture, scented with earth and leaf rot, and something sweet, something like fruit that has fallen and begun to give itself back to the ground. She is called Ara. She has been alive for 35 seasons, which is not a young life, not among her people. She has seen children born and children die. She has watched elders slip quietly into the long sleep, their hands finally still, their breathing becoming slower and slower until it simply was not. She has survived dry seasons when the streams pulled back to mud. She has eaten well in seasons of rain when the forest gave everything it had. She sits now at the base of a fig tree whose roots are as wide as a man is tall, whose bark is pale in the moonlight, whose leaves overhead are a shifting dark ceiling with silver gaps where the sky comes through. The fire is small. She made it small on purpose. A large fire draws attention. The yellow eyes that float at the tree line, the territorial males of rival bands who sometimes drift through these hills in the rainy months. A small fire is enough. Enough to keep the cold from settling into her joints. Enough to say, here, something lives here. Something that knows fire. Something that knows you. She feeds it slowly, a finger length of dry wood, then another. She watches the small flame accept each piece, curl around it, make it part of itself. The rest of the band sleeps behind her. She can hear them, the deep, rhythmic breathing of her sister's husband, who always sounds like he is dreaming of running. The soft whimper of her sister's youngest, a girl of 3 seasons, who is still learning how to move through sleep without bumping into her own feelings. The almost imperceptible breath of her mother, who is old now, whose breath has grown shallow these past 2 rainy seasons, but who still wakes each morning with her eyes sharp and her memory intact. Hera is the one who wakes in the deep of the night. She always has been. Even as a small child, she would rise when the moon was highest and sit and listen. The others thought she was afraid of sleep, but it was never that. It was something else. Something she could never quite explain. A sense that the deepest dark of night was where the world was most itself, where the animals moved according to their true natures, where the stars were clearest, where, if you were quiet enough, you might hear something that could not be heard in the daylight noise. She had been chosen as keeper of the band's medicine and memory, partly for this reason. The old woman who trained her, a healer named Shu, who had lived long enough to see the great river change its course twice, had recognized that quality in Ara immediately. "You have night eyes," Shu had told her. "Not seeing in the dark eyes, feeling in the dark eyes. Those are rarer." Ara thinks of Shu sometimes at moments like this, wonders where her spirit is now, whether spirits have anywhere to go, or whether they become part of the forest, the way a dead tree becomes part of the forest. Slowly, quietly, without drama. She does not know the answer to that. Nobody does. But she has her suspicions. Part 2. What the forest says at night. Listen with her now. Not to the words of the story, to the sounds underneath the words, to the forest that lives just behind your closed eyes tonight. From the left, far enough away to be unthreatening, there is an owl. It is one of the brown speckled ones, the ones whose call is more breath than sound, a soft two-note exhale that seems to come from no particular direction. It calls, waits, calls again. Something in the distance answers, barely audible. A thread of sound pulled thin across half a mile of canopy. The fire makes its small sound. It is not a crackling fire. It is barely enough to have a voice. What it makes is more of a murmur, a soft, continuous settling of wood into heat, into light, into ash. Overhead, the leaves stir, not from wind. There is no wind tonight. Not really. Only the slow breathing of the air as it cools and shifts. The leaves touch each other gently, apologetically, the way people do when they move past each other in a narrow space. Something small, a mouse perhaps, or one of the small grey rodents that live in the fig roots, moves in the leaf litter nearby. 3 or 4 scrabbling steps, then stillness, then 3 or 4 more. Ara does not look. She knows the sound. She has learned to know all the sounds. This is what it means to live inside a forest, to live with it rather than alongside it. You learn the vocabulary of every hour. You know the difference between the sound a branch makes when it falls on its own and the sound a branch makes when something lands on it. You know which birds sing before first light and which sing after. You know which insects appear only on the hottest nights and which only emerge after rain. You know the forest's moods, its silences, a true silence when even the frogs and insects stop. That is a warning. Something large is moving. Something the forest itself holds its breath for. But this is not that kind of silence. Tonight, the forest is easy. The insects are steady. The frogs are a continuous low undertone, almost like the sound of blood in your ears when you press your hands against them. The owl has moved on or gone quiet. The small rustling in the leaf litter has resolved into stillness. Ara breathes in, slow and long, through her nose. The air tonight has a particular quality she has noticed before in these middle night hours. It is cooler than the day air by several degrees, and the moisture in it is higher, so that when she breathes in, she can taste it. The minerals in the soil, the tannins in the bark, the faint metallic note of water somewhere not too far away. A small stream that runs year-round about 400 paces east through a gully overhung with broad-leafed plants, whose names she knows in her own language, but that we have no word for here. She breathes out slowly. Her shoulders drop. She has been tending the fire for a long time now. She is not tired. She rarely is at this hour, but she is reaching that state she knows well, the one that is not sleep and not full waking, a kind of wide, soft alertness where thoughts move slowly and what she sees and hears settles into her like water into dry ground. This is the state in which she does her best thinking. This is the state in which the world speaks most clearly. Part 3. What she carries. Beside her, within reach of her left hand, is a bundle wrapped in broad leaves and tied with a length of vine. She reaches for it now, unties the vine slowly, unfolds the leaves one by one. Inside, roots, bark strips, seeds, dried plant matter, a small curved shell that she uses to grind things, a flat, smooth stone. Each item has a name. Each name has a history. Each history belongs to someone who gave it to her, to Shu, who gave her most of it, but also to her own mother and to a man from a southern band they had traded with 3 dry seasons ago, who had shown her a route she had never seen before and explained, through gestures and a combination of words she half understood, what it could do. Medicine, in her understanding, is not a collection of tricks. It is a conversation. The plants are not tools. They are entities with their own properties, their own histories, their own way of interacting with the body. The body is not a machine to be repaired. It is a living thing with its own intelligence, its own way of knowing what it needs. The work of a healer is to listen to both sides of that conversation and find where they can meet. She lifts a piece of dried bark to her nose, breathes in. It smells of something sharp and resinous, faintly bitter, with an undertone of sweetness that only appears if you hold it long enough. This one, she knows, is good for headaches, for fevers that settle in the temples, for the particular kind of pain that lives behind the eyes when someone has wept too long. She sets it down carefully, lifts a root. This one is pale and gnarled, no longer than her middle finger. It smells of earth and something faintly floral, for sleep, for the kind of sleep that is hard to reach. For women who have just given birth and whose bodies cannot seem to stop being alert even when the baby is sleeping and everything is safe. For old people whose sleep has grown thin and broken. For children frightened by something they saw or heard. She does not need this one tonight. She sleeps easily most nights, but she handles it often, keeps her hands familiar with it, because familiarity with a medicine is part of how you work with it. You cannot truly know something you have only held when you needed it. She wraps the bundle again, ties the vine, sets it back within reach. The fire murmurs. She adds the last piece of wood she had set aside. Part 4. The stars she knows. She looks up. Through the shifting leaf ceiling above her, the sky shows itself in pieces. A dark blue-black, dusted with points of light, more stars than anyone in a city has ever seen, because there are no cities yet. No amber wash of electric light polluting the horizon in every direction. The stars are clear, brilliant, innumerable. Her people have names for the patterns. Not the names you might know. Those names are still tens of thousands of years in the future, waiting to be invented by people whose great-great-grandchildren have not yet been born. But patterns in the sky humans have always named. It is one of the most human things there is. The need to say, that group of lights looks like something. That arrangement has a meaning. I will call it this, and I will remember it, and I will tell my children. She knows the one that looks like a running antelope. 4 stars for the body, 2 for the horns, 1 for the tail. She knows the one that her mother calls the grandmother's hand. 5 stars in a rough arc, spread like the fingers of an upturned palm. She knows the path of the bright wandering star that her people watch for its position, because its rising at certain times of year has, over generations, proved to correlate with the rains. She watches it now. It is low on the horizon, through a gap in the trees, white and steady, not flickering the way the other stars do. Her people have been watching that star for longer than any of them can remember. The memory of watching it is older than the oldest living person, older than the oldest story any of them knows. It is a habit passed through generations in the same way the medicine bundle was passed, imperfectly, with things added and things lost, but still recognizably continuous, still a thread. She thinks, as she sometimes does, about the chain of women who sat before her in nights like this. All the women who looked up at that same star, all the fires they kept small, all the sleeping bands at their backs, all the dark forests full of sound. She cannot imagine their faces, but she feels them sometimes at moments like this, not as ghosts. She does not believe in ghosts exactly, but as a weight, a depth, a sense that she is not the first to be sitting in this particular kind of night, not the first to be watching that particular star, not the first to feel this particular wordless thing that she feels when the night is deep and the fire is small and everything is still. She is one in a line. And somewhere ahead of her, many thousands of nights in a future so distant it has no shape, someone else is at the end of that same line. Someone who also looks at this story, at her, and feels, maybe, a faint warmth, a recognition. That thought, strange as it is, gives her something. She is not sure what to call it. Comfort is not quite right. It is more like the feeling of touching something solid in the dark. Part 5. The memory she returns to her mind drifts, as it often does at this hour. She is thinking of rain, of a particular rain, 6 dry seasons ago, in a valley 2 weeks' walk south of here. She had been younger then, 29 seasons, and part of a larger group that had moved south to escape a stretch of bad hunting. The valley they had found was extraordinary, wide, grassy, with a long, shallow lake at its center, ringed with trees of a kind she had never seen before, pale-barked, with long, narrow leaves that moved in the slightest air. There were animals there in numbers that she had not seen before and has not seen since. Antelope in herds that stretched to the limit of vision, elephants at the lake at sunset, birds in flocks that darkened the sky as they turned. And rain. The rain there came in the late afternoon, most days, a rain that built from a white haze on the horizon, grew into columns of grey, advanced with a smell she can still summon perfectly in her memory. The smell of dry earth being opened, of dust becoming mud, of the air changing its very nature as the water arrived. She had loved it. She had stood in it some days, deliberately, let it soak through her hair and down her shoulders and arms, let it pool in her upturned palms, let the temperature of the air drop by what felt like half in a matter of minutes. She had felt, in that valley in that rain, something she has been trying to feel again ever since. A sensation of being completely, perfectly located, of being exactly where she was, in exactly this body, in exactly this moment, with no part of her attention anywhere else, no yesterday, no tomorrow, only the rain and the grass and the wide grey sky coming down. She has had that feeling since, in smaller doses. moments of it. The birth of her sister's first child, when the baby came out crying immediately and with open eyes, and the relief in the room was so total, it felt like a physical substance, like warmth you could hold. The taste of a certain fruit, which only ripens for a few days in a particular season, whose sweetness is so specific and complete that eating it is like having a conversation with summer. Nights like this sometimes, not always, but sometimes, the fire, the stars, the breathing of the sleepers behind her. She breathes out slowly and lets the memory of the rain settle around her, like the sound of the insects settles around her, everywhere, continuous, soft. Part 6, The Ones Who Share the Night. At the edge of the firelight, something moves. She sees it before she hears it. A pale shape, low to the ground, unhurried. A civet. It comes from the left, crosses the cleared ground at the camp's edge without acknowledging her, without slowing, and disappears into the shadow on the right. It moves with the particular fluency of an animal who belongs here, who has walked this exact ground 1,000 times and does not need to think about where its feet are going. She watches the shadow where it disappeared. Civets interest her. They are not dangerous, not to an adult, not to a fire. But they are shy, or were shy. She has noticed, over her years of watching, that the animals in areas where her band camps regularly have changed. The birds are less startled by movement. The smaller animals pass closer to camp. They have learned over seasons of observation that these particular two-legged creatures, who make fire, who smell strongly, who leave behind bones and charcoal, these ones are not to be feared if there is no sudden movement, no approach without warning. It is a negotiation, a long, slow negotiation, conducted entirely without words. The fire pops once, a small wet pocket in the wood releasing suddenly, and she watches the leaf litter at the camp's edge for any sign that the sound has startled something. Nothing moves. The insects continue. The frog undertone continues. She has seen, in her years, what happens when an ecosystem is startled into silence. The way the insects cut off mid-note. The way the air seems to become heavier. The way every creature between her and whatever caused the silence goes still, waiting, holding its knowledge inside itself like a held breath. This is not that. This is a forest in its ordinary nighttime business, living, digesting, moving, being born and dying in small increments. The antelope somewhere east of here are grazing or sleeping. The predators are doing what predators do at this hour, some hunting, some resting, some watching from high branches with eyes that gather the faint light and turn it into usable vision. The world is not worried. And so, neither is she. Part 7. What she is teaching. She thinks of the girl. 12 seasons old, daughter of a man who died. 2 dry seasons past of a chest sickness that nothing in the medicine bundle could slow. The girl is called Mara. She is quiet the way deep water is quiet, not because nothing is happening inside, but because what is happening inside is too large to express in ordinary movement. She has her father's eyes, which are very dark and very direct, and a habit of sitting absolutely still for long periods of time, watching in a way that is uncommon in children, and that Ara recognized immediately. Night eyes shoes words in Ara's memory when she thinks about Mara She has been teaching the girl for 2 seasons the medicine bundle, the names of plants, the way to prepare them, what requires grinding, what requires soaking, what must be combined, and what must never be combined. How to talk to someone who is in pain, which is different from talking to someone who is afraid, which is different again from talking to someone who is dying. Mara learns everything once and never forgets. This is unusual. Ara herself had needed to be shown things 3 or 4 times before they settled. Shu had told her that this was fine, that the memorizing kind of mind is less important than the listening kind of mind, but she had still sometimes felt slow, watching Shu repeat a preparation for the 4th time with perfect patience. With Mara, she shows each thing once, and then Mara shows her back precisely, and then says, "Why does it work this way and not another way?" She asks questions that Ara cannot always answer, and this is the part she finds most interesting about the girl. Not the memory, but the inquiry, the willingness to sit inside a question without demanding an immediate answer, to treat not knowing as a condition to inhabit, explore, slowly illuminate, rather than a problem to be quickly resolved. That is the rarest kind of mind. Ara feeds the fire again. There is not much wood left. She has enough for perhaps another hour, which is how she planned it. By then, the sky will have shifted enough that she can see, through the particular gap in the trees to the east, the first faint grey suggestion of dawn. Until then, the fire, the stars, the breathing of the sleepers. She is content. Part 8. The river in the dry season. She remembers the river. She has lived near rivers most of her life. Her people follow water, not in a desperate way, not usually, but in a way that all creatures follow water, with a kind of structural orientation, the way a plant leans toward light. The river is a given. The river is the axis around which everything else is organized. In the dry season, the river changes. It narrows. Its voice lowers. The bright chattering it makes over rocks in the rainy season becomes a quieter, more considered sound, deeper, slower, with longer silences between one sound and the next. The river in the dry season is contemplative. She has sat beside the dry season river many times and felt something from it that she cannot easily name. A patience, a capacity to simply be what it is, to move at whatever speed the season allows, to not be concerned with the speed it moves at other times. The river does not remember the rainy season as a better version of itself. It is itself at every season, full or thin, loud or quiet, wide or narrow. She would like to be more like that. She is not. Always she has a tendency, which Shu gently pointed out more than once, to feel what she is feeling very completely, to the point that it fills the space available. Joy takes over her body when it comes. Grief does the same. This can be useful. It means she is never distant from the people she helps, never clinical in a way that makes them feel alone. But it also means that sometimes the grief of others becomes her grief, and she carries more than is strictly hers to carry. She has been working on this. The river helps. The fire helps. The deep night, when everything is stripped down to its simplest form, helps. She breathes in the forest air, breathes out slowly. The insects hum on. Part 9. The slowest hours. There is a time in the deep middle of every long night when time itself seems to slow, not stop, not disappear, but slow in a way that is almost physical, as though the air thickens slightly, as though each moment stretches to accommodate more of itself than usual. She has noticed this all her life and never found an explanation for it. Perhaps the body, beginning to prepare for sleep, experiences time differently. Perhaps the brain, in its night-watching state, releases its grip on the normal pace of sensation. Whatever the cause, she is there now. She is watching the fire, but not watching it exactly, more receiving it, the way a stone receives warmth. The small orange and yellow movement at the center of the burning wood. The way ash builds slowly at the base. The way a particular piece of bark has curled as it heated, until it became something like a scroll, and is now giving off a thin white thread of smoke that spirals and dissipates above it. She is aware of the sounds, the frog undertone, the occasional small movement in the forest, the breathing of the sleepers behind her. She is aware of her own body, her weight on the ground, the slight roughness of the bark behind her back, the warmth on her face and hands from the fire, the cooler air behind her, the particular quality of stillness in her legs, which have been still for a long time now and have settled into a kind of dense heaviness, comfortable, grounded. She is not thinking exactly. Thinking requires an object, something the mind reaches toward or turns over. This is more like the mental state that precedes thought, open, receptive, undirected. She has never had words for this state in her own language. She simply knows it when she is in it. She has been in it many times. In a strange way, it is what she most looks forward to about the night watch. Not the productivity of it, although there is that, the thinking she does here that she cannot do in the social noise of the day. Not the solitude, although she values solitude in a way that is perhaps unusual in a group that lives as closely as her band does. But this, the slowness, the wide, wordless receiving of whatever is. The fire settles. She settles with it. Part 10. The Old Woman and the Morning. Her mother is named Niba. She is old. Not just old in the way that Ara is old, which, at 35 seasons, is not really old, but is the threshold of the age beyond which things can begin to change in ways you cannot predict. Niba is old in the way that means she has arrived somewhere. She has survived long enough that survival itself has become a form of wisdom. Her face is deeply lined. Her hair is almost entirely white, which in her band is considered a kind of distinction. Most people do not live long enough to have white hair. Her hands are gnarled at the knuckles. She moves more slowly than she used to, but she moves deliberately, which is different from slowly in the way that matters. She still gathers plants. She can still identify, by smell alone, almost everything in the medicine bundle. She has forgotten some things, names, occasionally, and the details of certain events from many seasons ago. But the deep structural knowledge she carries, the knowledge of how things work, has, if anything, become more compressed and certain with age. She is the person Ara will eventually become. This is not a thought that frightens her. It is, if anything, a thought that gives her direction. Something to move toward. The idea that all this accumulation of season after season of watching and listening and tending and learning might resolve, eventually, into something like what Niba has become. Every morning, Niba wakes before the band. She does not make a sound. She simply opens her eyes and lies still for a moment, perhaps a long moment. Ara has never timed it, and then she rises, slowly, and moves to the edge of the camp and stands, looking east. Ara has watched her do this hundreds of times. Once she asked her what she was doing. Her mother turned and looked at her with that particular expression that means the question is not quite wrong, but it is not quite right either. Then she said, "Watching the light come." Just that, watching the light come. Ara thinks about that most mornings when she goes to sleep after her night watch and never rises to take her place at the east-facing edge of the world. Part 11. The fire becomes smaller. The fire is nearly out now. She has let it go. There is a little wood left, but she is not feeding it anymore. She is watching it settle into itself, the bright orange core narrowing, the light around her deepening from amber to dark red to almost shadow. The world contracts around the dying fire, and she contracts with it, her vision narrowing, her attention softening. She can hear, now that the fire is quieter, more of the forest. The frog undertone is deeper, if that is possible. Or perhaps it only seems deeper because everything else has become so quiet. The insects too, a cricket, very close. She could reach out and nearly touch where the sound is coming from. Cycling through its rapid syllables, without pause, without breath it seems, though she knows it breathes, somehow, somewhere in that small body, from somewhere east and high in the canopy perhaps, or beyond it, in the open sky. A nightjar's churring, that spinning mechanical sound that rises and falls and rises, like something being wound up and releasing and being wound again. She loves that sound. It is a sound that belongs to the deepest night, the still hours before dawn. You never hear it in the daytime. You sometimes don't hear it at all, even at night. And on those nights, something feels absent, like a gap in a familiar song. The fire breathes out a long-last thread of smoke. The coals are bright, but still, like embers that have decided to exist without motion. She watches them. They will last for hours like this, banked in their own warmth, not quite dead, available if she needs them. She does not need them. The forest is warm, the night is not cold, and she is reaching the edge of her own watch, that point where her body begins, gently, to request sleep. Not demanding, not urgent, just a small, patient reminder. She stays a little longer. Part 12. The things she has learned. There are things she knows with certainty. She knows that the body has its own wisdom, that it wants to heal, given the chance, that most of what she does as a healer is not imposing something on the body, but removing obstacles, pain that is preventing rest, fear that is preventing recovery, something that should have moved through and been released but has become stuck. She knows that the forest is not indifferent to the creatures in it. She cannot say exactly what she means by this. She does not mean the forest has intentions, that it makes decisions, that it cares in the way she cares. But she means something. She has watched, for 35 seasons, the way the systems of the forest respond to each other, the way one creature's presence changes the behavior of 20 others, the way a dead tree feeds not just the beetles in its bark, but the fungi in its roots, and the birds that come for the beetles, and the smaller animals that come for the birds' discarded scraps. And the whole thing is so interlocked, so precisely arranged, that calling it indifferent seems wrong, seems like a failure of attention. The world is not designed, she thinks, but it is arranged. Or it has arranged itself. Or the distinction does not matter. She knows that the night is safe. She has always known this, even as a child. The The fear of the night is something she has never quite shared with her bandmates, for whom the dark holds more anxiety. She understands their fear. The forest at night is not without danger, and the dark does make many dangers harder to read. But there is something about the dark itself, the actual darkness, that she has never found frightening. She has always found it restful, like a cloth put over something bright, like the permission to stop being seen. She knows that she is exactly where she is supposed to be, not because anything has told her this, not because she has a philosophy of destiny or design. She does not, particularly, but she has lived long enough and paid enough attention to have developed a kind of trust in the moment she is in. This night, this fire, this forest, this band of sleeping people at her back. This is it. This is what there is right now, and it is complete. She breathes in. She breathes out. Part 13. What comes before the light? There is a particular quality to the air in the hour before dawn. It is the coldest point of the night. She can feel it now, a slight change in the temperature on the back of her hands, on her forearms, where they are not covered. The cold is not sharp, not uncomfortable. It is more like the forest exhaling one long, cool breath before it turns to meet the sun. The darkness, too, has changed. She cannot say how exactly. The trees are still dark. The sky above the gaps in the canopy is still black with stars, but there is something in it that is different from the blackness of midnight, a subtle increase in the depth of the eastern sky, something that is not quite grey, but is working its way toward grey, the way a thought works its way toward being clear. The birds know there is one. She thinks it is the small brown one with the orange patch behind its eye, the one that lives in the middle canopy and rarely comes down. That has begun to sing, a single phrase. 3 notes, with a slight interrogative rise at the end, then silence, then again. It is not sure yet. It seems to be testing the darkness, asking the night whether it is ready to leave. The night says nothing. The bird asks again, and then, after a pause that stretches for perhaps a full minute, a different bird answers, from further away, above, and to the right. A different phrase entirely, but occupying the same early morning space, the same tentativeness, the same quality of beginning. She loves this. The birds beginning before the light, the world's announcement of itself. She has seen thousands of dawns. She will, if the seasons are kind, if the sickness and the predators and the dry seasons do not find her too soon, see hundreds more. And she does not take any of them as guaranteed, but she does have faith that they will come. She has enough evidence now to have faith. The sun rises, the seasons turn, the water comes back when it goes, the forest recovers from fire, the animals return when the hunting has scared them away. Things come back. Things are lost, but things also come back. This is not the same as saying nothing is ever permanently lost. Things are. She has learned that, but the world has a tendency toward fullness that she finds at this hour, in this light, deeply reassuring. She watches the eastern gap in the canopy. The sky there is undeniably lighter now, not bright, not even grey, but something. The first faint ink wash of a color that has no name in her language, because her language does not need to name a color that exists for only a few minutes, on only one edge of the sky, once per day. The bird asks again, and this time more of them answer. Part 14. The world coming back. She hears her mother behind her. Not words, just the specific sound of Niba waking, a slow shift of position, a quiet exhale that is not quite a sigh, a few moments of complete stillness that she knows means her mother is lying with her eyes open, orienting to the day. Then the soft sound of her rising, not quickly. She takes her time with it now, her body requiring more negotiation in the mornings than it used to. Ara does not turn. She knows her mother will come and stand beside her and look east through the gap in the trees and say nothing for a while. This is their morning ritual, the only ritual they have that belongs entirely to the two of them, that does not involve the band. Niba sits down beside her. They look at the brightening sky together. After a long moment, her mother makes a small sound that, in their private shorthand, means, "Did it go all right?" The night, the watch, the fire. She makes the sound that means, yes. They sit together in the growing light. The birds have multiplied now. 4, 5, perhaps more, each contributing its particular phrase to the gradually thickening morning conversation. The frogs have quieted. The insects, too, are winding down, the nighttime ones retreating as the daytime ones have not yet begun. It is the transition hour between what the night was and what the day will be, between one kind of knowing and another, between the still, wide receiving awareness she has been in all night and the more directed, purposeful awareness the day will require. She is not in a hurry to leave it. She sits with her mother in the thin new light. She sits with the cooling coals. She sits with the quieting forest and the brightening sky and the breathing of the band as they begin, one by one, to stir. Closing what she leaves you with, she will not remember this night specifically. Not in 10 seasons. Not in 20, if she is given 20. The nights blur together in memory, each one slightly different, but the difference is too subtle for the waking mind to hold. What she will carry forward is not the specific memory of this fire, this civet passing at the edge of the light, this particular arrangement of stars, this pre-dawn birdsong. What she will carry forward is the shape of it, the knowledge that she can sit in the dark night and be all right, that the forest breathes and continues, that the fire, kept small, is enough, that the people sleeping at her back are there and breathing and safe, that the morning comes, that the morning always comes. You are lying down somewhere right now, in whatever night surrounds you. The night there is different from her night. The sounds are different, the air is different, the stars, if you can see them, are arranged differently. The people sleeping nearby, if there are people sleeping nearby, breathe differently. But the quality of the night is the same. The permission it gives to stop is the same. The way it asks nothing of you, except to be inside it, is the same. You do not need to watch the fire tonight. You do not need to listen for what the forest is saying. You do not need to tend anything, carry anything, know anything. Ara has been keeping watch for 100,000 years. She is still keeping watch. The night is safe. The morning will come. You can rest now. Let your body sink just a little further into wherever it is. Let your breath slow without trying to slow it. Let the sounds around you, whatever they are, familiar or strange, quiet or present, let them be just sounds. Background, forest, you are safe, you are held, you can sleep. The Library at the Edge of the Sea, a Sleep Story, Alexandria, Egypt, 270 AD. Let your body become heavy now. Not the heavy of exhaustion, not the heavy of something weighing on you. The other kind, the kind that is simply the body returning to itself, releasing its claim on the day, becoming once again just a body, warm and still, resting on whatever holds it. Feel the surface beneath you. Let your weight settle into it fully, without reservation. Good. We are going somewhere tonight that no longer exists, except in the imagination and in the grief of everyone who has ever loved a book. We are going to a city built at the edge of the Mediterranean Sea, a city of white stone and salt air, and the accumulated knowledge of every civilization the ancient world knew how to reach. We are going to its great library on a night in the 3rd century of the Common Era, when the library was still whole, still breathing, still full of everything it would one day lose. The woman we are going to find there is reading. She has been reading since before sunset. She will read until the candles give out or until the light comes, whichever arrives first. Let me take you to her. Alexandria at night is a particular kind of beautiful. During the day it is magnificent. The colonnaded streets, the white marble of the public buildings catching the Egyptian sun, the harbour with its impossible lighthouse rising 40 stories into the blue sky, the ships from every port in the known world arriving and departing in an endless slow procession. During the day, it is the largest city in the world outside of Rome, a city of 500,000 souls, a city where you can hear 6 languages in the course of a single walk from the harbour to the market. But at night, the noise drops away. The merchants close their stalls. The sailors return to their ships or to the taverns near the docks. The philosophers, who argue all day in the colonnades, go home to their families or to their quiet rooms and their private collections. The children are called in from the streets, and what is left is the sea. The sea does not sleep. It never sleeps. It is always there, always moving. Its sound a constant low presence at the edge of every conversation, every thought, every dream in this city. The people who were born here do not hear it consciously anymore. It has become part of the silence, the way a heartbeat becomes part of the silence of a body. But those who come from elsewhere, from the inland cities, from the desert, from the mountains of Macedonia or the forests of Gaul, they hear it immediately. They stop in the street and turn toward it and stand for a moment, arrested by something they cannot quite name. The library is on the eastern edge of the royal quarter, close enough to the water that on certain nights, still nights, when the air is not moving, you can smell the sea from the reading rooms. A faint mineral saltiness that works its way past the more dominant smell of the library itself, which is papyrus and dust and old cedar oil, and the particular quality of air that has been enclosed with a great quantity of knowledge for a very long time. The library at night is lit only in a few rooms. The others are dark, their vast collections of scrolls in their clay jars and wooden cases resting in the dark, the way knowledge rests when it is not being read. Waiting, patient, not diminished by the waiting, not anxious about the waiting, simply present, the way stone is present, the way water is present. In the east reading room on the 2nd floor, overlooking the harbour, a candle burns. Her name is Meresamen. It is an Egyptian name, ancient even by the standards of 270 AD, a name from the old religion. From the time before Alexander, before the Ptolemies, before the Romans, her mother gave it to her deliberately, which Merisemen understands now in a way she did not when she was young. Her mother was a woman who believed that names were not decorative, that they were structural, that a person grows into the space a name creates. Merisemen, beloved of Ammon, beloved of the Hidden One, the God whose name means what is concealed. She has always found this fitting. She is 41 years old. Her hair is black, still, with a few threads of silver at the temples that she does not attempt to conceal. Her hands are stained with ink at the right index finger and thumb, a permanent discoloration that no amount of washing has ever fully removed. Her eyes, in the candlelight, are very dark and very steady, the eyes of someone who has spent decades training herself to look at things without blinking away from them. She sits at a reading table of polished cedar, wide enough to hold 3 open scrolls side by side, which is how she prefers to work. 1 scroll actively reading, 2 others nearby for cross-reference, so that she can move between them without the interruption of searching. The table is near the window. In the daytime, this means good light. Tonight it means the sound of the sea, which comes through the wooden shutters she has left half open to the warm night air. She wears a simple linen robe, undyed, the kind that is practical rather than ceremonial. She dressed this morning for the library, not for company, and the library has never cared what she wore. She is the only woman scholar with permanent access to the reading rooms. This was not easily obtained. She does not think about it much anymore. She obtained it. It was a long process. It is done. But occasionally, in the deep of the night, when she is alone in these rooms with the scrolls and the candle and the sea outside, she is aware of the improbability of it, the way you might become aware of a scar whose origin story you have mostly forgotten. It is part of her. It costs something. She carries it without drama. Tonight, she is reading astronomy. The scroll in her hands is old. Not the oldest in the collection. The oldest scrolls are kept in a separate room under conditions of strict control, handled only with clean linen wrapping, read only in the presence of the chief librarian. But this one is old enough, 200 years, perhaps more. The papyrus has darkened from its original pale yellow to a warm amber brown, and at the edges it has grown brittle in a way that requires her to handle it with a particular delicacy, unrolling it slowly, keeping her fingertips at the edges, never pressing the surface. It is a copy of a copy of a copy. She knows this, the colophon at the end. She checked it when she first took the scroll from its jar, notes that this copy was made from an earlier copy during the reign of Ptolemy IV, and that earlier copy was made from a text in the original Greek of an astronomer whose name she recognizes, a man who lived 4 centuries before she was born, and who spent his life measuring the sky with instruments of his own devising. The text is a catalogue of stars. Not just their positions, although the positions are there, precise, given in degrees and fractions of degrees, the work of a lifetime of observation reduced to columns of numbers that are still, 2 centuries after this copy was made, more accurate than most of what she has read. But more than positions, this astronomer was also interested in the character of stars, their color, the quality of their light, the way they relate to each other in the sky, and the way those relationships shift across the years. She is not reading the numbers tonight. She is reading the other parts, the passages between the tables, The places where the astronomer stopped cataloguing and started thinking, started wondering, where the text moves from measurement to something that is not quite philosophy, but is not quite science either, something in between, something that she has always found to be the most interesting zone in any text, the place where the rigor of observation meets the openness of genuine not knowing. She finds a passage she has read before, on a previous visit, and reads it again. The astronomer writes, "I have measured these stars for 30 years, and I do not understand them any better than I did at the beginning. I understand their positions better. I understand their movements better. But what they are, what the lights themselves are, the nature of the fire that produces them, whether they are fixed or whether they too move in ways our instruments cannot yet detect. These questions I cannot answer, and I have come to believe that I will not answer them in my lifetime, and that is acceptable to me. The work of one life is to see clearly within the limits of one life. The work of seeing further belongs to whoever comes next." She sets the scroll down for a moment, sits with that. The candle burns. The room she sits in is long and narrow, lined on both sides with shelving of dark cedar wood, each shelf holding rows of clay jars, each jar containing one or several scrolls, each scroll labeled with a small tag of ivory or bone indicating its title and provenance. She knows this room well. She has spent more hours in it than she can calculate, more hours than she has spent in any other single place in her life, including her own home, including her childhood house in the Delta district where she grew up, the daughter of a grain merchant who read everything he could find and made sure his daughter could do the same. The room smells of papyrus. This is a smell she cannot describe to people who have not experienced it, not because it is indescribable, but because it is so completely itself that no comparison seems adequate. It is dry and slightly sweet and slightly dusty, with an undertone that is something like old wood and something like the smell of air that has been enclosed for a very long time. It is the smell of preservation, of things kept, of the act of keeping, sustained over centuries by hands she will never know. At the far end of the room, through the open doorway that leads to the main corridor, she can see a lamp burning in its wall bracket. The lamp keeper placed it there at dusk and will refill it at midnight. It is olive oil, the good pressed oil from the Fayum groves, and it burns with a steady flame, almost no smoke, a warm yellow light that softens the stone of the corridor walls and makes the library feel, at night, like something alive and breathing. Her own candle is beeswax. She brings her own. The library supplies tallow candles for scholars working late, but the smell of tallow bothers her. Something in its animal heaviness that conflicts, in her mind, with the lightness she wants around her when she reads. Beeswax burns clean and bright and smells faintly of honey. She has brought 4 of them. Tonight, she is on the second. Beyond the door and the corridor and the outer walls of the library, the city makes its nighttime sounds, mostly silence. A dog somewhere north, conducting a monologue with the dark. The very distant sound of something metal being moved. A cart, perhaps, one of the early market deliveries. Its wheels, on the stone street, a sound that travels a great distance in the still air. And underneath all of it, always, the sea. She breathes it in. The papyrus and the beeswax and the faint mineral salt. She picks up the scroll again. She has been coming here since she was 19. Her father brought her the first time. He knew the then librarian slightly, a friendship, based on a shared interest in Alexandrian geography, and he had arranged, after some negotiation that she was not fully aware of at the time, for her to accompany him on a visit. She remembered standing at the main entrance, looking up at the columns, and feeling a feeling she did not have adequate words for. Something between reverence and desire. The feeling of standing at the threshold of something enormous. She had been reading since she was 4 years old. She had read everything her father owned, and then everything his friends would lend, and then she had found other sources, the private collections of scholars her father knew, the reading rooms of the smaller temples, a copy house near the harbour where the owner had allowed her, in exchange for help with his accounts, to read anything in his stock that had not yet been sold. By the time she arrived at the library at 19, she had read more than most men twice her age. But this was different. The library held, at that time, somewhere between 400,000 and 700,000 scrolls, depending on how you counted, whether you counted multiple copies of the same work separately, whether you counted the annex collection at the Serapeum, whether you counted the works that were catalogued but not yet fully processed. The precise number was itself a subject of ongoing scholarly debate, which she had always found faintly comic. The library so large that the counting of the library was itself a scholarly project. She had stood at the entrance that first day and understood, in a way that she could only understand physically. It registered in her chest, in her sternum, like a sound at the threshold of hearing, that she would never read all of it, that no one would, that the library was too large for any single life, however long, however devoted, and that this was not a tragedy. This was, she had come to understand, the entire point. A library is not a collection of things to be consumed. It is a record of the range of what human minds have thought and observed and imagined, kept available for whatever question meets it, whenever that question arises. You do not need to have read a scroll for it to be doing its work, the work of being available, of sitting in its jar in the dark, ready, holding what it holds. That is already a service, already a contribution. She has spent 22 years coming to terms with the size of what she will not read. She has made peace with it. Most nights, a shift in the air, not a wind exactly, more a breath, the sea turning over in its sleep and exhaling in the direction of the library, pushing through the half-open shutters a wash of salt and night coolness that makes the candle flame waver once, twice, and then settle. She looks up from the scroll. The shutters. One is still, the other swinging gently, a few degrees in either direction. She watches it for a moment. Through the gap, the harbour is visible. The water dark and slightly phosphorescent at its edges, where the small waves break on the stone quay. The lighthouse on the island of Pharos, a column of fire at the horizon, its light turning on its mechanism, casting a slow circle that sweeps over the sea every few minutes. She has watched that light many nights. It was built nearly 6 centuries ago, when the city was young and the library was young, and the whole project of Alexandria, this improbable city, this deliberate construction, this city, built from an idea rather than from the slow accumulation of habitation, was still new enough to seem audacious. The lighthouse was built to guide ships, to make the harbour findable in the dark, in fog, in the confusion of open water. She has always thought of it as something more, or perhaps the same thing, understood more widely. A light that says, here is a place where things are kept. Here is a place where ships can come safely in. Here is a place you can orient yourself toward in the dark. The library is its own kind of lighthouse, she thinks, has always thought, not visible from the sea, not turning its beam across the water, but present in a similar way, a thing that says, here. This is where knowledge is kept. You can come here when you are lost, when you need to find your position, when you need to know what has been thought before, so that you can think again. The lighthouse beam sweeps across the harbour. She watches it reach the library's outer wall, touch it with a brief passing light, move on. She turns back to her scroll. She reads on. The astronomer. His name is Apollodorus, though she is not certain this is his real name or a name he took for his work, a common practice in his era. Apollodorus has finished his catalogue of the northern constellations and has moved to a section on what he calls the wandering stars, the planets, the ones that do not stay in their places in the sky the way the fixed stars do, but move against the backdrop of the constellations in paths that the astronomers before him had traced, and that he is refining, correcting, extending with new data gathered from his 30 years of watching. She knows this material. She has read several other treatments of it, some better than this one, and some worse. But Apollodorus has a way of writing about the planets that she finds unlike anyone else she has read, a quality of attentiveness that goes beyond measurement into something she can only call companionship. He writes about these wandering lights as though he knows them, as though 30 years of watching a thing moving slowly through the sky has created, between the watcher and the watched, a relationship. He writes about Venus. He uses the Greek name Aphrodite, but she reads it as Venus, the Latin name she grew up with a particular tenderness. He notes its brightness, its phases, the way it appears in the west after sunset in one part of the year, and in the east before sunrise in another, and he says, I believe these are the same object. I cannot prove this in a way that will satisfy everyone, but I believe it. The evening star and the morning star are one light, moving in a great circle around the sun, sometimes ahead of us and sometimes behind. This is not a new idea. She has read it in other sources. But the way he says I believe, the way he holds the certainty lightly, acknowledges it as belief rather than proof, and continues to hold it anyway. This is what she returns to, always in his writing. She thinks of all the things she believes without proof. Not many. She is rigorous by nature and by training, uncomfortable with assertion that outruns evidence. But a very few things, she holds with the certainty of belief rather than the certainty of demonstration. That the library should exist, that knowledge preserved is knowledge available to whoever needs it next. That the act of reading is an act of continuity, she placing her eyes on words that were placed there by a hand that has been dust for centuries, receiving what that hand sent forward into time. These she believes without proof. These she has built her life around. The candle burns steadily. Footsteps in the corridor. She does not look up immediately. She has learned to identify, by sound alone, most of the people who move through the library at night. The lamp keeper has heavy, flat footsteps, a slight drag on the left side. The night guard wears sandals with a loose buckle that clicks with each step. The old cataloguer who sometimes works through the night has a particular rhythm. 3 quick steps, a pause, 3 more, that she has wondered about for years without ever finding the right moment to ask. These footsteps are lighter, the assistant librarian. He appears in the doorway, young, 25 at most, with the ink-stained hands that are universal among people who work with scrolls, and the expression of someone who is not quite surprised to find her there, but is trying to appear as though he might have been. Mirasamon. He uses her name without title, which is how she has asked all of them to address her. She has no patience for the various titles that might technically attach to her position, finds them awkward in the intimate context of the reading rooms. Demetrios. Late again. Early, she says, which is something she has said to him before, the distinction being a matter of perspective rather than fact. He smiles, comes into the room, and goes to the shelf along the left wall, running his finger along the ivory tags of the jars until he finds the one he wants. He lifts a jar, peers inside, apparently confirms that what he expected is there, sets it back. I was looking for the Archimedes water catalogue, he says, for the morning. There's a delegation from the engineering school at the Mausian who want access to it. Second shelf from the top, she says. 3 jars from the left, in the cylindrical red jar, not the rectangular brown one. He finds it, holds it up briefly in her direction, as a kind of acknowledgement. You know where everything is, he says, not as a question, as a statement of something he has observed and still finds remarkable. Not everything, she says. I know where the things I have looked for are, which is a narrower set than everything. Still, she returns to her scroll. He lingers for a moment. She can feel him in the doorway, not quite wanting to leave, the way young scholars often linger in the presence of older ones, hoping something will be said that is worth keeping. Go to bed, Demetrios, she says, not unkindly. His footsteps recede down the corridor. The room settles back into its reading quiet. She sets down the Apollodorus and reaches for the second scroll. This one she has been meaning to read for several months. It came to the library in a donation from the estate of a recently deceased collector, a Roman merchant who had spent his retirement buying everything he could find, indiscriminately, which meant the collection contained a great deal of material of middling quality, but also, occasionally, something remarkable. The librarian had flagged this one for her, had left it on her table with a note in his precise small handwriting. You should look at this. She unrolls it carefully. The papyrus is in better condition than the Apollodorus, newer or better stored. The script is a clean Egyptian demotic. A writing system she reads fluently, though she learned it only in her 30s, adding it to the Greek and Latin she had been trained in from childhood, and the Coptic she had taught herself from a text in the library's own collection. The text is a medical treatise, but not a medical treatise she recognizes. She knows the major medical texts in the collection, the Hippocratic Corpus, the works of Galen, the Egyptian medical papyri of the older period. This is something different, something that refers to practices and observations that do not appear in any of the texts she knows, using terminology that is partly familiar and partly not. Drawing on what seems to be a tradition she has not encountered before, she reads slowly. The text describes the treatment of pain in the chest, specifically the kind of pain that comes and goes, that grips the chest and the left arm, that is made worse by exertion and better by rest. She knows this condition from Galen, but this text's understanding of it is different, more detailed, more specific in its recommendations in ways that suggest not theoretical knowledge but actual clinical observation, the knowledge of someone who has seen many cases and tracked their outcomes over time. She has no way to know who wrote it, She has no way to know when. She has no way to know where this knowledge came from, what tradition produced it, whether the people who held it are still somewhere holding it, or whether this scroll is all that remains. She reads, "The candle makes its small sound. The sea makes its large, patient sound." She pauses in her reading and simply sits for a moment, not because she is tired. She is not yet. The second candle is only halfway burned, and she has 2 more in her bag, and the kind of attention she is giving tonight to the scroll in her hands is the kind that sustains itself, that feeds on what it receives. She pauses because something in the text has moved her in a way that needs a moment to settle. The writer of the medical treatise, whoever they were, wherever they came from, included, in the middle of a very precise clinical description, a single sentence that is not clinical at all. A sentence that is, if she is reading it correctly, a kind of prayer. Or not a prayer exactly, an acknowledgement, a recognition, written in the middle of the practical work, that the person being treated is more than a body with a malfunctioning chest, and that the healer is more than a technician applying a technique. She has not seen this before. Not exactly. Not this combination of rigor and openness, in this proportion, in this kind of text. She breathes in. The smell of the papyrus is very present to her now. She has read so many scrolls over so many years that the smell has become, to her, not just the smell of preservation, but the smell of something else, of the transaction, the thing that happens between a written text and the person reading it, the strange intimacy of it. Someone sat down in some room, in some country, in some era, and thought something, and wrote it down, and now she is here, in this room, in this night, reading it. The papyrus is not the thought. The ink marks are not the thought. But the thought passed through them and left its shape in them, and now passes through her eyes, and leaves its shape in her, and something has moved across centuries, carried by nothing more substantial than dried plant fiber and carbon dissolved in water. This, she thinks, is the real wonder. Not the size of the collection, not the famous scholars who have worked here, not the political protection the library has enjoyed, or the vast resources that have been devoted to it. The real wonder is simpler. A person thought something, another person received it. The time between them is irrelevant. The distance is irrelevant. The language requires a mediating knowledge, but even that is thin, permeable. The thought comes through. She reads the sentence again. The thought comes through. The lamp in the corridor has been refilled. She heard the lamp keeper pass, the flat footsteps, the slight drag, and looked up to see the corridor briefly brighter, the flame leaping as new oil reached it. Now it has settled back to its steady, warm yellow. Her third candle. She has been here for 5 hours, perhaps 6. Her back is aware of this, in a low background way that is not yet discomfort, just information. She shifts slightly in her chair, rolls her shoulders once, and returns. She has set aside the medical treatise, not finished, but come to a natural pause point, a section break in the original text, and returned to the Apollodorus. She is reading the final section of his catalogue, which covers the southern stars, the ones that are only visible from the Mediterranean and further south, that cannot be seen at all from the northern reaches of the empire. She has never been south of Alexandria. She has never seen the far southern sky, the stars that Apollodorus is describing now, the great constellation that runs along the horizon in the summer months when you are far enough south. She knows them only from texts, from the descriptions of people who observed them and wrote them down. This does not make them less real to her. One of the things she has understood through her years of reading is that knowledge received from a trusted source is not lesser than knowledge received from direct experience. It is different. It arrives differently. It sits in the mind differently. But it is not lesser. The world is too large to experience directly, and most of what any person knows about any subject has been mediated through a teacher, a text, a tradition. This is not a deficiency. It is how knowledge is possible at all. At the scale of a civilization, she reads the southern stars. She cannot see them from this window. But she is with them in a way that is real enough. The queen is 3 years into her rule of Egypt. Marisamman thinks about her sometimes in the way she thinks about any historical figure who interests her, which is to say, not with the reverence or the alarm that colors most people's thinking about rulers, but with a steady, curious, somewhat clinical interest in what the person seems to actually be and what forces seem to be actually shaping them. Zenobia is from Palmyra in Syria. She rules, or ruled. The situation is complicated and changing. A territory that at its greatest extent stretched from Egypt to Asia Minor, an empire assembled by her own will and the military ability of her generals, sustained by a court that she has deliberately filled with philosophers, scholars, and thinkers of the kind who tend to be underutilized by rulers, more interested in war. She has been good for the library. This is Marisamman's primary assessment of any ruler. Have they been good for the library? Not because she believes the library is more important than justice, or peace, or the welfare of the people in the markets and the fields. She believes none of those things. But because the library is what she knows most directly, what she can assess most accurately, and because a ruler's relationship to knowledge, to the preservation of it, the accessibility of it, the funding of the work of keeping it, tells her something true about them. Zenobia has continued the funding, has added to it modestly, has appointed a librarian who understands the work. This is not nothing. This is, in Marisamman's experience of rulers, rarer than it should be. She does not know what will happen. The political situation is unstable. Rome is unhappy with the independence of Zenobia's empire, and Roman unhappiness, historically, tends to resolve itself through the movement of legions. She does not think about this at night if she can help it. She cannot control it. She can continue to come here, read, carry what she has read further into her own understanding, and trust. The same trust she gives to the lampkeeper and the night guard. The same trust she gives to the beeswax and the cedar oil, that the things worth preserving will find a way to be preserved. She is not always certain of this, but she returns to it. The sea shifts outside, a larger wave, briefly, against the harbor wall. She reaches for the third scroll. This one she has read before, many times. It is not officially hers. Nothing in the library is officially anyone's, but it lives on the shelf she frequents most, and she has requested it often enough that the assistant librarians have learned to leave it available for her. It is a collection of letters. Letters between two philosophers, a man and a woman, written over the course of 30 years in the 1st century BC, before the Common Era. The man was a Stoic, the woman a Platonist, and they disagreed about almost everything. Not bitterly, not with the kind of disagreement that closes into itself and becomes mere point-scoring, but with the generative disagreement of two minds who respect each other enough to push back hard, and who are genuinely curious about where the pushing leads. She loves these letters. She loves them the way she imagines a musician might love a particular piece of music, not because it is perfect, but because it does something that she has not found done anywhere else in quite the same way. The two voices are so distinct on the page. The man writes in long, coiling sentences that accumulate qualifications and return to their original point from unexpected angles. The woman writes in shorter, clearer strokes, direct, sometimes brusque, with an occasional sentence that seems to cut through everything the previous exchange has established and open a new space. They are arguing about memory, specifically about whether the soul remembers things it knew before this life, the Platonic position, or whether all knowledge comes from experience and reason with no prior source, the Stoic position. It is a debate she finds endlessly interesting, not because she has resolved it herself, but because it seems to her to be actually about something more fundamental, about whether what we know connects us to something larger than our individual lives, or whether we are, each of us, alone in our knowing. She reads the woman's voice most carefully. The woman writes, in one of her later letters, she can see the handwriting has changed slightly, the letters a bit less even, perhaps written at a time of illness or old age. She writes, I no longer believe it matters whether the memory is from before this life or from within it. What matters is that when I read something true, I recognize it, not learn it. Recognize it as though it has always been part of me, waiting to be uncovered. Where that recognition comes from, I leave to the philosophers who enjoy that question more than I do. That it happens, I am certain. Mrs. Salmon sets the scroll down. She has read that passage many times, and it reaches her every time. The recognition. Yes, that is it, exactly. The fourth candle. She lights it from the stub of the third, which has burned down to a flat pool of warm wax, the wick submerged. She lets the new flame establish itself. It takes a moment, wavers, catches, and sets it in the holder where the third one was. The room is very quiet. The night guard's rounds have stopped. He sits somewhere, she knows, in a room near the main entrance, keeping his vigil in whatever way night guards keep their vigils, perhaps sleeping, perhaps staring at the wall, perhaps doing something she has no knowledge of, because she has never asked and he has never said. She is not curious about the night guard the way she is curious about the texts. Some things she leaves uninvestigated, not from lack of interest, but from a recognition that attention is finite and must be directed. The scrolls on her table, the Apolloterus, fully read now, rolled back carefully and waiting to be returned to its jar. The medical treatise, half read, lying open at the section where she paused. The letters, also open, at the passage she returned to. And the jar of the third scroll she means to look at before the light comes, a mathematical text that Demetrios mentioned last week, a treatment of curves and their properties by a mathematician from Syracuse. She reaches for it, unrolls the beginning. The handwriting is dense and small, the kind of handwriting that belongs to someone who thinks faster than they write, and is always slightly impatient with the limitation of the hand. She has to slow her reading, which is itself a pleasure, the text demanding a kind of attention that ordinary reading does not require, each line asking to be decoded before the next can be approached. The mathematics is beautiful. She has always found mathematics beautiful, though she came to it late, not until her late 20s, through a text in this same library that treated geometry as a meditation as much as a demonstration. The shapes that mathematics describes, curves, proportions, the relationships between numbers that recur in the natural world, these seemed to her to be something like the grammar of the world. Not the world itself, not the content, but the structure within which content happens. She reads about curves. The sea outside describes its own. She is not aware of the transition. This is always how it happens. She does not notice the dark becoming less dark. She does not notice the stars outside fading from their clear, cold brightness to a more washed-out version of themselves. She does not notice the sky beginning to separate from the sea on the horizon, the line between them becoming visible where before there was only undifferentiated dark. She is reading, and then she looks up. For no particular reason, her attention simply surfacing momentarily from the text. And the room is different. Not bright, not yet, but the quality of the dark has changed. The candle, which was the only light an hour ago, is now competing with something, a greyness coming through the half-open shutters, a pre-dawn pallor that has not yet committed to being light, but has definitely ceased to be dark. She looks out the window. The harbour, the water is the colour of lead, flat, catching the pre-dawn sky and giving it back as a reflection, with no warmth in it. The lighthouse beam still turns, but its light is less dramatic against the brightening sky. It reaches further, she knows, in the absolute dark, and close to dawn it becomes more a habit than a necessity, still turning because it always turns. The mechanism not knowing or caring what the sky is doing. The first birds. She can hear them, somewhere in the gardens near the Mausion, the small academic institution that shares the royal quarter with the library. A single bird first, as always. One phrase, repeated. Then another answering, and another. The morning conversation building, from nothing into its full rapid complexity, in the space of a few minutes. Like a musical piece that begins with a single instrument and accumulates until the full ensemble is playing. She breathes in. The salt air is stronger in the morning, before the heat of the day drives it back. It comes through the shutters now with a confidence it did not have at midnight, moving the loose edge of the scroll on her table, lifting and settling. She is done. Not finished. The mathematical text is only a quarter read, and the medical treatise has another half to go, and the Apollodorus has passages she wants to return to, but done for this night. Her eyes have reached their limit, not with pain, not with tiredness exactly, but with a kind of fullness, the feeling of having received as much as can be comfortably received in one sitting. She rolls the mathematical text carefully, returns it to its jar, does the same with the letters, with the medical treatise. The Apollodorus she holds for a moment. She reads the passage one more time. The astronomer's passage about what he does not know, and what he has learned to accept about not knowing it, and the work of one life being to see clearly within the limits of one life. She rolls it up, sets it in its jar, puts out the candle. The room continues to lighten, slowly, without her help. She will go home now, through the waking streets. The city will be beginning its day. The first deliveries arriving at the market, the harbour workers already at the quay, the smell of bread from the bakeries that open before any other business. She will walk through it without hurry, carrying in her mind everything she read tonight, some of it already settling into permanent knowledge, and some of it still loose, still finding where it belongs. She will sleep until noon. She will wake and eat something and read something else, something from her own small collection at home, and think about what the texts are saying to each other across their centuries of separation. And in the evening, she will come back here. She will always come back here, for as long as the library stands. For as long as she is able to walk through its doors and sit at its reading tables and open its scrolls in the particular way you open something old and valuable, with care and with gratitude and with the recognition that what you are holding has survived many things to reach your hands. You are lying down somewhere now. You have been here for this long night, in this room, with this woman and these scrolls and this candle and this sea. You carry it with you. The papyrus smell, the candlelight on old writing, the sound of the Mediterranean in the dark, the astronomer who watched the stars for 30 years and learned to hold his uncertainty lightly, the philosopher who wrote, "I no longer care where the recognition comes from, that it happens, I am certain. Let it all settle now." The way a candle settles when it is put out, not disappearing, but changing. The heat remains, the warmth in the wax remains, the light has moved somewhere, but it has not been destroyed. Nothing that is truly known is ever lost, even the things that seem lost, the scrolls that will not survive, the knowledge that will be broken from its chain, the texts that will crumble before anyone copies them. Even those have been held for a time in a mind, have passed through the transaction, have shaped the thinking of whoever received them, and those people passed their thinking on, as Mirasaman will pass hers, as the astronomer passed his, as the two philosophers whose letters she loves pass their long argument forward into the world, where it is still available to anyone who finds it. You are part of that chain. You have been reading and listening and receiving for as long as you have been alive. Everything that has ever moved through your mind has changed the shape of what you can receive next. You are not a container. You are a continuation. Rest now. Let the night hold what the night holds. Let your breath slow to the speed of the sea. Long in, long out. Long in, long out. The library stands. The candle has been put out. The light remains. Sleep